afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the communication exercise. If you remember, one of these days I talked about Pavarotti. Well, let me remind you the effort we did. The idea was this person, Pavarotti, probably the best singer in the opera house, very small audience, very sophisticated audience, you know, very challenging, but a diminishing group. Unless they manage to go out of the opera house, that will be a languishing business. And I mentioned here, they did manage. They went to the stadiums, they went to the TV shows, they went to the musicals, they recorded love songs, and all of a sudden, they were global personalities. And it has also a very positive secondary impact to the opera and to the people wanting to follow his career, and people enthused about seeing him personally. And I recommended you that we need to follow that kind of strategy, going from the opera house for the experts, for the sophisticated ones, to the larger stadiums, to the masses, to the average people. We have been successful in building this communication network. 500 individuals talking about forests, building on the European initiative. We have been able to do networks in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, in the Near East. And we will do today an additional exercise, and I'm really happy to present to you an animated video. I hope this is going to work. And let's see, can we do the animated video now?
Forests are vital to life on Earth. They clean our air and water, helping to combat climate change, and are a rich source of food, income, and renewable products made of wood. Managed sustainably, forests provide solutions for our future. But with so many of us living urban lifestyles, it's easy to forget just how vital forests are to life on Earth.
The European Forest Communicators Network was set up 20 years ago and now consists of 160 people from 40 countries and 25 international organizations. It gives the forest sector a stronger voice by joining forces across country borders.
The network helped us attract a huge amount of attention for the European Forest Week, which was held in Rovaniemi, Finland in 2013. Thanks to the network, we achieved unprecedented global outreach on major media, and this enabled us to spread the message of the many benefits forests have to offer to more people.
La red de comunicación forestal y ambiental de América Latina y el Caribe empezó a articularse en Perú el año 2011. Para el 2012 se expandió a países de Centroamérica. Actualmente nuestra red está compuesta por organizaciones público-privada comunitarias, quienes de manera coordinada hacemos uso de las redes sociales como el blog o el Facebook para compartir información forestal tanto a nivel local, regional e internacional.
Our main objective is to bring forestry to the public domain as a way of making sure that forestry issues are deliberated on effectively across the continent. We combine both Anglophone and Francophone Africa, and we have established mechanisms for making sure that this bilingual communication does take place.
The Asia-Pacific Forest Communication Network is a very diverse group, but one thing that we have in common is a strong need for capacity development. In 2015, we came together for a workshop on participatory development communication, and then more recently in 2016, we met at Asia-Pacific Forestry Week where we shared our experience and expertise.
C'est vrai que nous sommes le réseau le plus récent, cependant nous sommes engagés à servir les forêts et les gens. Nous avons investi dans le renforcement des capacités des membres en réseaux sociaux. Nous avons développé une stratégie de communication pour la 4e semaine forestière à Barcelone en 2015 et nous allons contribuer à la communication de la 5e semaine forestière qui se tiendra au Maroc en 2017.
Together, we form a global network
With a single goal, which is
to communicate the value of forests to people in all regions of the world.
We will have the pleasure now to meet some of these same characters in real life. Who else better than Matt Frei to conduct the effort? Matt is now with us, a familiar face. He's in the British Channel 4. He was before at the BBC. And it is my pleasure to introduce Matt. Matt Frei, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we didn't have to use our lip reading skills in the end. I don't know if you've noticed walking around this area in the searing heat of the day, but we are right in the epicenter of what used to be the Roman Empire. The Circus Maximus just around the corner, the Palatine where the emperors lived, the Forum just on the other side. And if you close your eyes and you use your imagination, especially after half a bottle of Chianti at lunchtime, you can feel the footsteps, the hooves of history clattering around you. You can smell history. But we're here today to talk about communication. And for all those Roman laws and aqueducts and legionnaires, you have to ask yourself, we have to ask ourselves, what did the Romans ever do for mass communication?
Quite a lot, actually.
Bloody hell. Who's this?
Quite a lot, actually.
Quite a lot, actually. Are you real? Yes. You're a real centurion. So what exactly did you do for mass communication?
Well, we built a network of magnificent roads so that the empire, divided into provinces, they could always be in touch with Rome and each other.
You scare me when you say that. So you built the roads. Anything else?
Well, messengers could travel along these magnificent roads at great speed across the whole of our empire. Actually, we have one of the world's first postal services.
Postal services. So we have roads, we have postal services. That's it, right?
No. You know, we were the first people to really understand the power of mass communications. Many historians put our ability to understand the people and how to communicate with them at the very heart of our success in building an empire that stretched all the way from Britain to Mesopotamia.
Careful with that sword, careful with that sword. All the way, right, okay, so you've got the roads, you've got the post office, you've got the mass communications. What else?
We invented texting.
Say that again.
We invented texting.
You did not invent texting.
We did invent
You
texting.
didn't have one of these, did you?
No, actually, but we invented a shorthand language, just like you use today for texting on those things, and we speeded up our communication by using three-letter words.
Three-letter words, like OMG.
OMG.
LOL.
WTF.
ADG. WTF, come on. SPQR, that's a four-letter word. Okay.
Yes.
I present to you the centurion, Caius Litonensus. You saw Kai in that film earlier on, and you'll be seeing more of him later on, but he's singing tonight, La Traviata, just down the road. He's got a part in Hollywood. His agent just called me up to say, can he possibly do the next Spielberg film? But anyway, Kai, thank you very much indeed. A big hand for Kai, come on. Give it up for Kai. How many of you would be prepared to dress up like Kai in order to advance their careers? Okay, thank you very much for that. So let's start with our session. Now, this is all about communications. And as René has told us throughout this week, we're very good at preaching to each other, but we need to become those Pavarottis. We need to sing outside this auditorium in order to be heard in the rest of the world, because what we do, all the centurion jokes apart, is vitally important. And arguably, we could be doing it a lot better. And we have someone here today who I'll introduce later on who will give us a few tips about how we can enhance our communications. But first of all, I would like to introduce on stage someone you also saw in that film, Guster Cinji, who will hold a tree talk. Now, Guster is a forestry scientist, specialist in rural communications, editor of Tree Talks from Uganda, and leader of the Africa Forest Communications Network. Guster, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to talk to you about the network. The video has simplified what I'm going to talk about. As forestry professionals, we know that forestry actors are not good communicators, and therefore one of the reasons this network was formed was to improve communications and build our capacity to communicate across the continent. And Africa, as you know, is a big block, 30 million square kilometers, with a population of about 1.1 billion. And all these people depend on the forests and trees on the continent. But unfortunately, these trees are being cut down, and we are losing them from time and time again. And therefore, the need for effective communication to revert the situation. As a network, we started about 2012, but we have now grown into a membership of 99 members, drawn from 24 countries. When did we start? We started, that is our journey of 4 years. We started in 2012, where we had Eastern and Southern Africa members get together to strategically position ourselves to support forestry communication in the region. At that meeting, it was deemed necessary that we bring together our colleagues from the Francophone countries. And then we had another meeting in 2013 in Windhoek in Namibia, where the Francophone colleagues met. And when they met, we had this mooting around South Africa being the host of the World Forestry Congress. We thought it was necessary both the Anglophone and Francophone countries to meet and strategically think about how we were going to support the publicizing of the World Forestry Congress. Therefore, in this joint meeting, we brought together the Anglophone and Francophone countries and discussed mechanisms for publicizing the World Forestry Congress, of course with the support of FAO in the background. We had strategic planning and consultations with colleagues across the different networks. We talked to other networks and talked about campaigns. We talked about making sure that we were going to deliver the message to the Africans, but also the other countries, other continents. We talked about strategies on how we will remain relevant as a network, strategies for fundraising, strategies for sharing information. And we also heard from our colleagues from the European Forestry Communicators Network that is much older, for purposes of making sure we had enough strengths to join into the world of communication, but also learning from them on the things to avoid. We now have a platform. We are online. We share information using our website, which is translated in 8 different languages. We have a Google portal where we share information, and part of what the discussions in this COFO meeting have been shared with colleagues in Africa, and is being shared Africa-wide. We have a Facebook page, which is growing, and we are getting more likes day and day in. And we are using this to communicate, especially when we have international events like the International Day of Forestry. But as you know, Africa is one of the least developed continents in terms of technology. The penetration is still low, but we are growing bigger and bigger time and time again. We had this opportunity of the World Forestry Congress last year, and it was a big bang in communication. It brought us together, communicators from Europe, from Latin America, from Asia, and ourselves. And we had a capacity building session on social media, the boot camp. And it brought together 54 participants. And out of the discussions during the World Forestry Congress, we were able to share 31,000 tweets, reaching out to 32 million people. It was a record that we set. We don't know how many will be tweeted this time round in the COFO meeting. Where are we going? As we have been talking about joining the stadium, we need to move to the stadium. We need to move from the conference rooms. We cannot communicate from the conference rooms and reach the greater audience. We need partnerships, we need resources, we need support, and we are grateful as a network to the support that streams through from FAO. They have brought us this far, and we are continuously growing big. We are also grateful for the countries, the African countries, colleagues from Europe, colleagues from Latin America and Asia, all the resources that are being brought together to strengthen communication. We know that foresters are not born communicators, but we are saying that this needs to change so that we reach the communities for whom we are designed to serve. Where are we going? We are going in the right direction, and I think we are carrying a useful load. Thank you.
Guster, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Guster.
You're welcome.
Now, after one of the fastest costume changes in modern dramatic history, I would like to welcome onto stage the former centurion Kai Littunen. When Kai is not vanquishing barbarians in the forests of Germania or extending the reaches of the Roman Empire to Thracia and Persia, he is indeed the deputy leader of the FAO and UNFAO Forest Communicators Network and communications manager of the Finnish Forest Association, and I have to say, one of the bravest men I've ever met. Kai,
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I'd serve us some light snacks now, some food for thought to set the scene a bit more. And I'll show you a few snapshots like on the environment where we communicate as a sector. So, we live in a world where fast and constant change is prevalent. Everything changes. The issues change, players are, media is, everything needs to be quicker. The ways we work change. And in this world, some of the forest issues are pretty high on the environmental discussion agenda. We got stuff like illegal logging, climate change, deforestation, and so forth. Big issues. Even the use of forest for bioenergy, as opposed to using oil, is pushing us a little bit towards the bad boys and girls corner once in a while. And we need to ask ourselves, how did this happen? We have a wonderful renewable resources and we use it responsibly, and we have a very good case. Previously, natural resources like forests, they were often perceived as to be used at will. But then environmental responsibility questions entered the equation. And then, regardless of the ownership, more and more these natural resources are seen as common property. And we need the acceptance of the society to be able to make good use of the forests. And for that, we need to build social capital, which means building networks of social contacts, sharing knowledge and views. First and foremost, building trust and interacting within the forest sector and outside the forest sector. So we have an excellent case to provide forest-based solutions to save the planet, simply. And we need to be confident and vocal, but at the same time, understanding different perspectives and opinions and views of the world that might be really different from ours. So we like our stuff a lot, but it does make no sense to just shout louder. We have to learn to listen as well, even better than we are, and engage with people outside the forest sector. I'll say a few words of the various ways to communicate to affect this situation. You know that new electronic and digital avenues open up almost daily today at this time. And this is where the issues are talked about and where they're driven. And we need to be a part of these talks. Otherwise, others will speak for us, and they already are. So it's an opportunity for all of us, and we need to use it. We need to keep up to speed on the development, the fast development, to be able to influence it and not fall behind. At first, social media, it looked like a nice little dimension in the corner of the interweb. But then someone found it's a viable business, so it grew. And it went mobile. And it grew. And it grew. And it grew. And it grew. And it keeps growing. So we need to focus and position ourselves on where we want to be in all this maze. Otherwise, we might get overwhelmed. And we need to keep in mind the old saying that fact is fact, but perception is reality. And in this digital world, today, fact may be fact, but perception often is someone else's reality. So, of course, the strongest and most trustworthy interaction is between real people at best. So we need to find them and focus on them. We mix friends, real friends, with other kinds of friends. And we have more relationships, but these relationships often tend to be more shallow. So we need to figure out a balance between networking and engaging online and connecting in person. Traditional media, they're still valid channels, but they're in change as well. The Independent in the UK recently said that they're going all digital in the future, so there's changes there as well, and others will follow. I'll briefly touch now a kind of a challenging case from Europe, where I'm from. Forest issues do not have an automatic home in Brussels, where the decisions are made. They're dealt in many places and many institutions. So, on a European level, someone estimated that there are about 250 organizations representing forests, forest-based industries, forest-based ideas, forests on a broader sense. And the question is, are we all sending the same message? Are we talking in a similar way? Because at the same time, some of our competitors put their eggs in far fewer baskets than we do. So then the elemental question is, whom will the regulators and other decision makers listen to? I think overall we become much better as communicators. There are very many good cases out there already, but I think we need to do even better. We need more concerted action to unite our voices and seek partnerships outside the forest sector and inside the forest sector. And this old saying still holds true today. It's too late to form a network when you need one. So I think the FAO Forest Communicators Networks are a recent, very good step in the right direction. And I propose we push these networks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you for that very witty presentation. I mean, as Kai just said there, it's about the messaging, it's about the networking, it's about organization, and it's about using this myriad, this forest of social media tools at our disposal, but doing it in a very coherent and effective way. Well, I don't know how many of you came to Durban last year for the Forest Congress, but one of the star performers there was someone called Robert Grace. He is a, let's call him an advertising guru. He is the head of strategy and the founding partner of the advertising agency M&C Saatchi Abel in South Africa. And we are very lucky, thanks to the powers of modern aviation, to have him right here in Rome. So Robert is going to give us a presentation about what he thinks, as someone who's not a forestry expert, but a communications expert, what he thinks we need to do in order to get ourselves heard. Robert.
Thank you very much, Matt. Hi, good afternoon. Oh, there's a video. I'm giving one of those, apparently. It's lovely to be here, and it's a privilege, actually. I think I'm going to give the only talk that doesn't have anything to do with trees, so hopefully you'll find it inspiring and motivating and exciting at the end of the day. The world of communication. I think there's only one simple, fundamental question you have to ask at the end of all your efforts, and it's quite simply, are you being heard? Are all those efforts that you're putting into it, the time, the resource, the investment, actually getting through? And when you take a step back and you think about this increasingly noisy, cluttered, fragmented world that we live in, one where Pokemon Go is sadly far more entertaining than the plight of forests, with 10 million active users a day in the last 2 weeks, I think a lot of our efforts are going to waste. And in fact, just last month, Ban Ki-moon went to the Cannes Advertising Awards. He went to go and speak to a bunch of advertisers to ask for their help to communicate the SDGs. And the task was so simple, and I think it echoes what we have to do in this room today. Help us transform a complex and abstract agenda into a personal and emotional story about how we can build a better world. I mean, if not that, then what? And that's what we've got to solve here today, and hopefully as you leave this room and into your networks, how you can take that communication further. But why is it so difficult? I get asked that the whole time in the world of advertising. Why don't we just do it ourselves? And I think the challenge is that we've started to confuse two very different things. Information, which is giving out all the policies, the facts, the figures, the mandates, and actually getting completely overwhelmed by all the information. Versus communication, which is getting through. Simple example, Martin Luther King, when he stood up in front of an entire nation, he didn't say, I have a plan. I think that would have been a bit of a letdown. And no doubt he had a plan, but he crystallized it into saying, I have a dream. And with that, he rallied an entire nation behind his vision. So how do you get to that? How do you get to that simplicity? I often use the analogy of an artisan who carves these exquisite elephants. And when asked, how do you do that? He says, well, it's quite simple, really. I take a block of wood. This is my only reference to a tree, by the way. I take a block of wood, I take my knife, and I carve away everything that isn't an elephant. I carve away everything that isn't an elephant. That's such a perfect descriptor for what a great communication strategy should be about. Have you carved away everything that is superfluous? At M&C Saatchi, across the network, we talk about this as a philosophy of brutal simplicity of thought. It's based on a very simple philosophy that it is far easier to complicate than to simplify. And hopefully what I want to share with you now are 3 inspiring and motivating tenets to consider when developing your communication strategies, and hopefully some interesting work to inspire you. The first thing that we talk a lot about is purpose. What is it that you're hoping to achieve at your most meaningful? And the first case study I'm going to show you comes actually out of our Cape Town office. It was a small little idea of some street pole posters that is slowly turning into a global movement. Have a look.
South Africa, a country where the haves and have-nots live side by side, but seldom connect. People want to help, but aren't always sure how. And for the homeless, begging is degrading. In partnership with the Haven Night Shelter, the street store was born. The world's first rent-free, premises-free, free pop-up store for the homeless. Somewhere safe to give and easy to collect. Made only from posters, people hang up and drop off donations. Then the homeless choose things they actually want and like. For many used to rummaging in bins, this was their first dignified shopping experience.
Shopping at the street store was for me very nice. The people was accepting me with friendly faces.
A week before the pop-up, we called for donations on social media. Within days, we found ourselves on prominent national blogs, news, radio, and TV. But the world wanted in too. Bono's One organization, Huffington Post, Good, and hundreds of others. Thousands of homeless were clothed in South Africa alone, and millions in free PR was generated. More importantly, we brought people together like never before. But homelessness is international, so we went open source. To date, 455 stores have popped up in 280 cities, and 5,087 are in progress.
Brand new way of helping the homeless.
And it's now on Macaulay Avenue in Chattanooga.
A few simple posters to restore the dignity to the homeless in Cape Town suddenly touched the lives of so many more.
You are sent for me, but thank you very much. There's no way I can pay you back. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, man.
I think we did the sums, and I think so far, 60,000 homeless people have benefited from that. And, sorry, the screen's blank here, but don't worry, I'll come back. What I think is so incredible is that there's 4 simple posters, but with a very powerful purpose to restore dignity to people who probably have never had it. I can actually choose something I want, rather than just give what's been given to me. So a simple purpose, restore dignity. The second thing to consider is this idea of who is your enemy. We love having this conversation and debate with our clients. If I take a brand like this, who's their enemy? If I asked you, you'd probably say Adidas or Puma. But no, their enemy is apathy. Because if Nike can't get you up off the couch through their advertising, they can't motivate you to want to get out and do that run, they won't have a business. So your enemy is that thing that you've got to overcome in order to be successful. What are those barriers that exist? This next case study is breathtaking. It's quite astounding in its simplicity. A simple stunt that they pulled off in Paris to highlight the plight of water in Africa. Have a look.
Ndikaitali vijumuri bambi jenga moja kilele ndikare sonsiaba sana nakofuna eja kamoja tunuru mela mibe sendi mbayambu mera man jenga moja jupi skilonga sana jenga moja jupi ya jupa fanfa.
When we're thirsty, we just go and get water. But getting water here means spending the whole day walking. Our mission at Water for Africa is to build sustainable, clean sources of water for villages. We asked Sabre2 to make one last effort.
Waningwale mika weno mpingo neja eja ya leye kurmi wane baj frambe na furngawe tuniye tu be jikero.
Tabatou Sané a parcouru les 42 km hier en marchant.
Ces images avaient fait le tour du monde, d'abord le tour des réseaux sociaux.
C'est une manière pour elle de récolter des fonds pour construire des pompes à eau dans son pays.
People have donated so much more than I can ever have imagined.
Yele jamba wanende kane puru bugala be bukana kumbo hana mu yingolo ngana jikamma bukana kolo.
If you're looking for a benchmark for simplicity, I think that's it. What a powerful message, so simply delivered. But when you think about the enemy, if you live in a city like Paris or in Rome where there's a fountain every few hundred meters, the idea of walking 42 kilometers to fetch water it's incomprehensible. Can't even understand what you're talking about. And there they just brought it to life so brilliantly. So lastly, and actually one of my favorite is, what does success look like? So when you're developing those communication plans, what are you actually hoping to achieve? And this is beyond the facts and the figures. This is about what is it that you want people to think, to feel, to say, to do? What are those emotional triggers that we're going to pull in people? The next ad I'm going to show you is from a global brand tackling a big issue, but bringing it right down to a human level in a really astounding way.
Hi, Aaron. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
I think a really powerful piece of communication tackling a gender issue, but trying to raise people's consciousness about those unconscious things that people say every day and don't actually realize what they're saying. And with 62 million views on YouTube, I think they've absolutely raised the consciousness behind it. So 3 things to think about. What's that clear purpose? What is it that we hope to achieve at our most meaningful? What is that enemy? What is that thing, that obstacle that we have to overcome? And make sure you're bringing that into the conversation. And lastly and importantly, what are you measuring? And hopefully, by doing this, we do what Ban Ki-moon spoke about, moving from the abstract and the complex into the personal and the emotional. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Robert. Robert, why don't you stay here and take a seat? I think you're at the end there. Now, if we can do that so powerfully for water, for the homeless, and for girls, surely we can do it for trees as well. Now, I'd like to invite onto the stage, Gusta, would you like to come back, please? Also, I'd like to invite Ingvald Schwantel. He's the leader of the FAO and UNFAO Forest Communicators Network, head of forest policy and information at the Federal Ministry of Forestry, Environment and Water Management of Austria. Caroline Liu, manager of the strategic communication at RECOFTC and leader of the Asia Pacific Forest Communications Network. Raúl Pérez Albrecht, strategy communications consultant and regional head of the Latin America Caribbean Forest Network. And Patricia Sfer is a rural development expert at SEEDS International, leader of the Mediterranean and Near East Forest Communicators Network. Welcome to you all. Please take your seats. So what we're going to do now is, having seen that very powerful presentation that Robert gave us, and we're all clear in this room about the substance, the detail, the policy. But again, how do we make it heard outside? How do we get the message over trees to be as powerful as what we just saw for water or the homeless? And we're going to have a little exercise here. So we've got 2 groups of people. Ingvald, Raúl, and Patricia will present the issues that are germane to their region when it comes to communications. And then it'll be Caroline and Gusta. And after each of their presentations, Robert, with his considerable expertise, will give us he'll come in like a soup chef, like a master chef, to tell us where we've gone wrong. And he will be utterly brutal and honest.
No complaints allowed at this restaurant.
Okay. All right. So Ingvald, Raoul, and Patricia, if you'd like to start off, please. I don't know what order you worked out, but you want to take it first, or? Okay.
Yes. Okay.
You go first.
Can you hear me? Yes. I have to admit I'm still touched emotionally by the examples Robert just presented to us. And I think he made the point at the end that it's how do we move from the abstract to the personal and emotional. And this actually takes me to one major challenge in forest communication we face in the European region and maybe beyond. Some people call it, it would be the forestry slaughterhouse syndrome. It's, put simple, people love forests, have a strong emotional attachment, most of the people. And they like wood, they feel good with wood. But they have a certain problem, they feel uncomfortable with the process in between. Cutting trees, logging, that's something difficult to digest when it comes to emotions, when you feel good with something. But we have the figures, the information. This part we have in order. We have a concept, sustainable forest management. That's not a mantra. We have instruments, we have practices to put it into place. All our data show that the forest area is expanding, volume, there's a lot of diversity in forest, and so on. But if you look into public perception surveys on forests, then you see that the vast majority of Europeans, I don't know how it is in other areas of the world, but in Europeans, they believe that the forests are shrinking, they are going down, they are destroyed, they disappear. So they're very scared. And naturally, they can't feel comfortable when you go out and cut trees. And this is what forestry is, of course, associated with, cutting trees, because that's obvious that we do. So my one question to Robert, as an advertising communication guru, would be, what would be an effective communication approach to make the use of trees from forests emotionally acceptable?
Yeah. Okay, store that question in your mind. We're going to take 3 points together. Patricia, you're next.
Okay. The main challenge, actually, when we want to, if you want to ask for an advice or an answer for a question, how can we make this communication about forests a positive thing? Usually, any communication in our region is related to like an emergency or a catastrophe that is happening with the forest. This is one thing. Another issue that is important is when we talk about sustainable management as a way for sustainable, for the protection of the forest or to maintain the forest, how can we maintain the equilibrium between the two extremes of destruction of the forest by illegal logging, fires, and so on, and to have from the other side the conservation and extreme protection measures. Yeah. How really, what's the difference? What's the line that would really cut between these two extremes? And how can we make people balance these two parts?
Yeah. Okay. Raoul.
I improved my English last month, but I prefer speaking
Okay.
English. Yeah?
Do we still have translation at the moment? Yes, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. We have.
Bueno, en mi caso, es pasar de no solo lo simple, sino a lo relevante. ¿Qué es lo que ocurre? En general, cuando uno ve los bosques y lo veía a nivel político, tienes gobernantes que tienen un promedio de liderar naciones de 4 a 5 años. Entonces, ¿cómo transitar a que los gobernantes y los líderes piensen en gobernar cientos de años, miles de años, porque esa es la vida de nuestros bosques? Para mí ese es un gran desafío. ¿Cómo hacerlo?
Okay, so it's about continuity, looking strategy developed way into the future when governments tend to be fairly short-term experiences. Okay. Robert, so here you have 3 slightly different experiences.
I think what's common between them and something that we do a lot in the advertising world is changing the conversation, because the conversation that's being had across these 3 regions seems to be the same old dialogue. If I stepped outside, if you think a brand like Apple, I'm an ad man, so of course you have to have an Apple reference of some sort. They changed the conversation. You used to buy a computer based on hard drives and processing power and what it could do. and Apple came along and they said, here's a thing of extreme beauty. It's simple, it's amazing, and you want it. It doesn't matter about the hard drive and the space it goes. I don't think many of us know how big our iPhones are. So change the conversation. And I think Patricia's absolutely right. I think one of the ways of absolutely doing that is bringing it into the positive, but I think the other thing is bringing it down to a human level. Statistics just go over people's heads. They are inundated with facts and figures. How do you bring it down to that human level and into their world? I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, I mentioned Pokemon Go. I mean, it is ridiculous, but there are 10 million people a day spending 45 minutes on that platform. Has anybody approached Nintendo to go, well, can't we do something like this, put the Pokemons in the forest, and can't we engage with a message there around forest, or can't we have some sort of communication or dialogue there? But I think sometimes we get so caught up in our world that we stop seeing the world that actually normal, average people engage in on a daily basis. And I mean, one of the really interesting stats that I was doing as I start to get more clued up on forests is that in the Amazon represents 2/3 of cancer-fighting drugs. So now, imagine you had a campaign that talks about, here's a visual of the Amazon, and it says, 2/3 of cancer-fighting drugs come from me. Let the others be discovered. Well, suddenly it becomes really poignant because I'm sure most people have somebody that has been affected by cancer, and here's a space that represents our hope. And that's a very different conversation to have versus the one that I had when I was 7 years old, watching the National Geographic yellow box thing come on and how the Amazon's being destroyed, because that dialogue's old. I think
Do you think people are bored by that dialogue? Do you think it bores people?
Absolutely, and I think that very few consumers react off the negative. I think you've got to go, here's the positive, and how can you get people to feel they're a part of it or enable them to be a part of it? Same thing in Europe, if you think about, here is a forest, and you go, well, what could this forest be? This forest is actually a library, or this forest is going to be an apartment block, or this forest is going to be low-cost housing. And suddenly you start to have a very different conversation versus sustainable forestry.
Is it also perhaps a way that we should celebrate the use of wood in everyday life as something really precious? I mean, which means cutting it down to use it, but we appreciate the forest for what it gives us much more than we do now.
Absolutely, because I think it's about, and I think that's what you mean by human level. What are those tangible, simple concepts that people, in those few split seconds that you have their attention, that they're going to understand, feel connected to, and actually maybe do something about or talk about at the dining room table because they've understood that message that you've given them.
Okay, you're not off the hook yet, Robert. I want to hear from Caroline and Gustav what your particular issues are. Why don't you go first, Caroline?
Okay, thank you. So in Asia, one of the major issues is that we need to strengthen local communities to dialogue with government. But the issue is that local communities aren't always aware of forest policies that affect them. So what can we do? How can communication help that so that policies are both communicated to local communities in a way that is relevant to them and that they understand, and on the other side, for local communities to then engage and raise their concerns to government about forests?
Okay, and Gustav.
The current generation in Africa is responsible for deforestation and all the mistakes that we have done in management of the forest resource. So the future in Africa is going to be on the new generation. And for us as communicators in the African continent, we are in a dilemma on how to engage the new generation to get commitment to forestry as a career. And the challenge is the new generation is dichotomized in different categories. Yeah. We have the in-school generation and the out-of-school generation. But also, along the continuum, we have the urban generation, we have the peri-urban young generation, and we have the rural generation, the children, the youth that live closer to the forest estate. Our dilemma is, how do we engage these children, the youth, to get them committed to forestry, but also to enlist them as communicators so they can take the message to fellow children, but also to the adults, their fathers, their mothers, their clans. Yeah. That's a big challenge.
Okay, so there's your challenge. The young generation, they have the attention span of a fruit fly, but they know how to use an iPhone.
I know all too well. I mean, in terms of gas transition and Africa, I mean, we spend a lot of time at the agency researching millennials and millennial behavior, and one of the key things that they want to absolutely feel a part of is something that has purpose. Now, how much work they're prepared to do is still debatable, I think, but they certainly want to feel that they're working for somebody, engaging with someone, affiliated to an organization that has a strong sense of purpose. There's this lovely story of John F. Kennedy when he was walking through NASA and he sees a janitor with a broom and he says, "What do you do here?" And he says, "I send a man to the moon." And that's what you mean by purpose, a simple common purpose. And if you can communicate that, you start to give people a reason to listen, a reason to want to participate. And I think it's about breaking it down into the simple building blocks. What are the positive stories you can tell? So, you know, if I talk about Elon Musk, fellow South African from Tesla, what he has done has been born out of an obsession with the sun. He said, what can we do with this natural resource? There are lots of young kids who want to be Elon Musk because they think he's pretty cool. Who are the other people in forestry that we can start telling those positive stories that says they're part of a purpose? That's why I have meaning in my life, because I'm engaged in this world of forestry. And I think that's the
But what I don't get is we've been talking about forests for decades. So where's the Cinderella in the forest world? Why haven't we got our Pavarotti or someone who's been singing, screaming, shouting, you know, doing poetry on behalf of trees and forests? I mean, we know they're important. So what are we missing here? Patricia?
We're missing the dream.
We're missing the dream.
Yes, I mean, I come back to Robert's presentation when you talk about the plan and the dream. A plan goes to technical people where you have like a log frame, you know, with 20 columns of information and so on. But the people need something which is tangible and concrete. A dream is something that would mean to them when it is related to like daily activity or something that is very close to them. So if you create the dream for them, they will follow you.
Maybe the problem is us, everyone in this room.
One thing.
We're all guilty. Too many committees, too many graphs, too many SDGs and ADGs and SPQRs and OMGs, and
I would say
it's just too bloody complicated. Is that the problem? What do you think? Maybe not.
I also think it's about just, again, changing the lens by which you're looking at what you're doing, because actually it's probably there somewhere, but because you aren't looking at it through that filter, through that lens, it's probably been overlooked. So how do we get in there and just change that conversation? You know?
But there has to be a very poignant personal story about a tree and a child, or a tree and a boy, a tree and a family. It's got to be out there somewhere.
Absolutely.
Where are the storytellers here?
And I think that you know, coming to Caroline and the Asia issue, it comes back down to that very simple message. You know, the truth is, simple messages enter the brain quicker and stay there longer. That's the fact of advertising, that's the fact of communication, the fact of everything. Comes down to that. And I think it's about, again, that human level. So if I take the Always Like a Girl campaign, you know, they could have done a campaign that says, don't be derogatory towards women. And they could have gone down this very factual stance and all these things that you should not say. They could have actually done the list. Here's the things you shouldn't say. But they said, why don't we make Like a Girl mean amazing things? I can tell you which message I would back. And I think we're too busy saying, here's the 10 things. Where's that positive message that people are going to go, that's why I want to be a part of this thing? And I think that's what we're missing. And it's not that this is wrong at all. In fact, this is the starting point. But I think the next point is to carve away and get to that rallying cry.
So if, let's say, we're not saying this, we're just imagining this, but let's say the FAO came to an advertising firm like yours and said, we've got this problem. We can't communicate. We can't get our message out. What would you do? Would you get a team of your best creative directors together and sit in a bunker somewhere in Johannesburg or in Cape Town with a good bottle of Stellenbosch, and then would you come up with some ideas? I'm not asking you to do that right now.
No.
We're missing the wine. But I mean, what would you actually do to make it happen?
I mean, one of the great stories is the Dove campaign, and you know, all familiar with Dove and their 1/4 moisturizing cream. The story of how that came about is that the ad team actually went to the factory where they made Dove, and they saw this person pouring in this liquid, and they said, well, what's that? I said, oh, well, this is the moisturizer. And off that became this proposition that built that brand for 20, 30 years. So for us as advertisers, it's really important to get beneath the skin, to actually go out there and experience what's going on. You'd be amazed at how many call centers I've sat in my life and listened to consumers. And I think it's about getting behind the skin of it, and then yes, drinking lots of wine till late in the night to come up with an idea of some sort that resonates. But I mean, to that, I mean, there are three simple filters that I think you must ask yourself. Is it relevant? Is the message relevant? And it's quite easy to tick that box. Then you've got to go, is it original? So are we saying something in a way that hasn't been said before? Because then it's just going to become background noise. But the most important one is it impactful? Because you can do the above two, but damn, it can be boring. And the one thing consumers don't have time for is a boring message. Unfortunately, it's just the world we live in. So how do you inject impact into it?
But also you're dealing with scientists in forestry. And maybe, you know, a forester is able to say, well, actually, you know what? My message isn't simple because science isn't simple. I can't reduce it to, you know, a Mars bar slogan.
Yep.
You know, I'm sorry, Mr. Advertiser, you've got the wrong idea here. What do you think, Gusta?
I think, yeah, it's time that foresters and other scientists styled up. I don't want to offend anybody working on RED, the reduction of emission from deforestation and forest degradation. That alone scares a listener.
It's a long...
It's not science. That is not science. It's the acronym already complicated.
Yes.
And then they add a plus sign to mean sustainable forest management and the benefits that come with it. Why don't you simply talk about the benefits?
I mean, to that point, I mean,
Good point.
I think an interesting reference again is Elon Musk. So here he's designed an electric car that's anything but an electric car, because 10 years ago, an electric car was a very boring, ugly-looking thing. And he doesn't sell the Tesla based on the fact that it's an electric car. He designed a high-performance sports car that's incredibly beautiful and aspirational. Oh, and it happens to be electric. That's amazing. But the conversation was different. It wasn't, here's the electric car. Here's a beautiful sports car that you'll want to own. And I think that's the shift.
Okay, I want to just open this up to the audience. Do we have the ability to get the audience to ask a few questions? We're slightly running over time, but we all seem to be cozy and enjoying each other's company, so let's carry on. Lady with the glasses there, there you are, thank you. Question, no statement, please. Okay?
I have a question for the advertising guru.
Please don't call me that. That's a terrible...
What do you think is the enemy for us who work in forestry? And considering that a lot of the people we tend to try to reach are not in forestry and they live in cities, how do we build that connection for them? Thank you.
I mean, I don't have the pithy word for it, but I think that the communication has become boring. I think consumers are not interested in the message that you have to sell. I think there's so many other causes fighting for their attention. And what's interesting when you look at the brand world, look at how many brands are starting to take on causes. So now you're not just up against advertisers trying to sell you soap or feminine hygiene or whatever it is. They're taking on causes. So now you're up against that. And I think that you've got to go, is this message really that interesting? And I'm not saying it's not important. Of course it is. But how do you elevate it out of that?
Okay, good question. Lady over there with the blue cardigan.
Thank you. Forest-related issues are complex, often complex. Simplifying the message can sometimes create misinformation with political, social, and environmental consequences. For example, forests mitigating floods. This is not a universal concept. Someone could decide to plant trees, there could be a flood, and they lose their housing, their livelihoods, their land. So how do we manage the trade-off between creating interesting, oversimplified messages and creating more meaningful conversation?
I mean, that's a big question. I mean, what I will say is that there's not one client I deal with that doesn't say, my task is very complex. Everybody's business and everybody's world is incredibly complex. There's nobody's that isn't. I have never had a client or a CEO say, I have a very simple business with a very simple problem. There is always complexity, and I always say, you know, we have limited time, resource, energy in our lives, and we always just talk about winning where it matters. You can't win every conversation. It's impossible. But you've got to pick those ones that are going to shift the dial most significantly. Because when you start to say too much, you actually end up saying nothing. it's true. And you've got to pick those messages, and you've got to say it again and again and again. If you ever watched Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, present, and if you haven't, go onto YouTube and just watch him. He is brilliant. And every presentation, he starts off with the very simple statement, at Apple we're about enriching people's lives through technology. And he keeps on saying that one phrase over and over and over again. And he says, if it doesn't do that, we won't make the product. And that's why they only make a handful of products. And yet they are the biggest brand in the world. So I think it's about just, picking where you want to win. Can't be everywhere.
Okay, one last question. Anyone? Yes.
I'd just like to thank the panel and acknowledge the sheer diversity of views here, but I'm going to touch on something, perhaps a little bit of an elephant in the room. How can forest communicators who are in the government system overcome the challenges of communicating for the government, but still ensure that our message on forests is heard?
Okay, that's actually probably not one for you, Robert. Maybe that's Raul. You take this one. But we're going to have to translate it. So you go easy on my Spanish. It's not that good. Okay.
Yo creo y vengo de una región que tiene justamente ejemplos buenos y ejemplos malos. Voy a poner el caso de Costa Rica. Costa Rica nos muestra que los bosques pueden generar recursos a través de turismo, a través de biodiversidad, y lo puede hacer. Mi país tiene un montón de bosques, más de la mitad de mi territorio es bosque, pero mi gobierno piensa en el desarrollo energético. Entonces, en la medida que estos sueños que han dicho sean compatibles, es posible que mi país pueda aprender de otro país que está desarrollando y sacando recursos a través del desarrollo de los bosques. También es relevante en la medida que es significante para el bolsillo de los gobiernos, de los pueblos. Yo creo que los bosques son un aliado totalmente invisible. Todo el rato nos están filtrando aire puro, agua fresca, tierra fértil. Y ahora no es un momento de elegir o no elegir cuidar los bosques, ya es un momento de cuidar o cuidar, ¿no? Simplemente eso. Entonces, en la medida que es compatible de que el sueño del bosque es simple y te da vida, y en ningún momento está peleándose con el ser desarrollista, porque hay países que creen que el bosque significa no al desarrollo, no a la economía. Yo creo que el sueño principal es la vida.
So we're circling back to the original dilemma that we had outlined 3 days ago. Different power interests, different ministries. It's not just about the message, it's also about policy, it's about power, it's about turf, it's about money, it's about all these things. Anyway.
Correcto. En efecto, o sea, de hecho, cuando hablamos de los bosques, estamos hablando ya de nuestro sustento de vida. Eso significa todo el agua que ustedes están recibiendo. Muchos de ustedes no se preguntan, ¿de dónde viene el agua? De la pila. Muchos países, cuando abrimos la pila, dependemos del bosque, porque el bosque me genera lluvia. Hay otros países que dependen de su nieve o de su mar o de otros procesos, pero yo creo que el 30% del planeta vive del agua. Si tú comes una hamburguesa, no es que dices, oh, qué bien las vacas, no, sino el bosque está generando nutrientes para que tengas tierra y la vaca te genere la carne. O sea, hay una relación directa en todas las cosas que se pueden imaginar del bosque. Entonces, ese es su sueño. Más allá de su sueño, es su realidad, es nuestro sustento y nuestro techo y nuestro hogar y todo lo demás.
Okay, one last quick one, then we've got to wrap it up. Anyone else? Yes, yes.
Well, yo comparto plenamente you listening in?
Have you got the English?
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I think we've got translation.
Yo comparto plenamente la idea de que tenemos que regresar al tema de los sueños, al tema de lo humano, ¿no? Que es finalmente lo que comunica de manera más poderosa. Pero cuando uno está sentado frente al director de presupuesto público del Ministerio de Economía de su país, ¿no es cierto?, y te dice, ¿por qué te tengo que dar el presupuesto a ti en vez de dárselo a educación o salud? Nos es muy difícil encontrar para esa persona la forma como crear el mensaje. Es más fácil tal vez encontrar la forma de hacer campañas como la que hemos visto en los medios para un público masivo y sensibilizar, pero para ese que toma decisiones, que está en un sector como economía o como transportes o etcétera, etcétera, ¿cómo lograr convencer al tomador de decisiones que tiene que elegir presupuestos en el Estado.
Okay, let someone else answer that question. Who'd like to take it on this side? Patricia.
I would like to, yes.
Okay.
Finance is very important, and I think in every project, the budget is something that is very important. We need to always link the forests and the financing and the funding for the forest with the benefit it's giving to the community itself, the people that are benefiting from this forest, and also to the services that this forest is providing. When we are able to translate this into dollars, then we can convince them. It's important to always think of communication as an important aspect of any project we develop. Decision makers, they need communication because they need to translate their decisions or their strategies to the level of the people and have the people next to them and not in front of them. They want to really make them their alibi for that and their allies. And at the same time, the people, they need to communicate to the decision makers because they need to translate their challenges, their priorities, their worries about the forest, about the resources, about all the challenges they are facing to develop this economic or to improve their own livelihood. So communication is an important aspect in both sides. And when we acknowledge the importance of communication at this level, I think it will become very easy to add it to the budget.
Okay. A very practical note to end on. Thank you very much for your contributions. Thank you also to the translators for staying beyond their shift. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. There we go. Thumbs up. I'd like to thank Maria de Cristoforo, my friend, for organizing this session. And I'd like to thank our wonderful panel, Robert, Raoul, Caroline, Ingvald, Patricia, and Augusta. And I'd like to thank you for staying around and asking such good questions. And I'd like you all to go away and think of at least one really good idea about how to sell trees to the rest of forest humanity.
Yeah.
We all have a good idea in us.
Absolutely.
Let's try and sell it. Think of it in the bath or in the shower as you walk through the heat or when you have your first glass of Prosecco tonight. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Matt.
And the centurion, Kai. We bow to him. Okay, good.